Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 4 of the 2024 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And can you hear it? It's right around the corner. That noise you're hearing, the crowd, college football is almost here. It's right around the corner, less than a week away. Saturday, August 26th, week 0 of the college football season, which means that following week, we've got the first full slate of games. College football is back, baby, and I cannot be any more excited. So what we've been doing the last couple of podcasts is really doing a conference outlook. We've taken a look at the SEC and the Big Ten. Now it's time to take a look at the Big 12. This was a conference at one point, thought that it might have been on its last legs. Oklahoma, Texas possibly going to the Pac-12, forming a super conference out there. Then Oklahoma and Texas decide, you know what, we're actually going to move east to the SEC. But what does the Big 12 do? They turn around and they bring in Cincinnati, BYU, Houston, UCF, and while they're strengthening in numbers, the Pac-12 out on the West Coast, especially without that TV deal, they wind up essentially blowing up that conference. That conference implodes. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington heading off to the Big Ten in 2024. And this same conference is going to pick up the Arizona schools, both U of A and ASU, along with Utah and Colorado. But again, that's in 2024, so we won't be talking about those programs in this podcast. We'll actually be talking about them in the last hurrah of the Pac-12 here in a couple of episodes. But it's time to really take a look at the Big 12. And when you think about these new teams coming in, I think when you look at the Big 12 overall, there are a lot of teams. TCU coming off of a dream season, getting to the college football playoff, and then the championship game. Max Duggan at quarterback, really kind of a Cinderella story. You look at K-State and what they've been able to bring to the table. Iowa State, not quite as good as they've been in recent years. You have Brock Purdy. Will McDonald, IV, is gone now, playing obviously with the 49ers and Jets respectively. Kansas is an intriguing team, I think. Jaylan Daniels there. I think what Lance Leipold is doing there in Lawrence is really interesting. I think that's going to get a lot of eyes there. But it's a conference. Look, Texas, I think it's their conference to lose. OU under Brent Venables really trying to build things back up there with that program. And when I look at it, I think the 4 teams coming in, looking at the Big 12, saying, you know what, the conference isn't nearly as deep as it was. But I think the Big 12, the existing Big 12 teams, are also looking at these 4 teams and saying, you know what, we're catching them at the right time coming into the Big 12 conference. Cincinnati, just a couple of years removed from Desmond Ridder, but there are a lot of question marks now on this Scott Satterfield-led team. Then you look at Houston. What are they going to do now that Clayton Tune and Tank Dell have taken their talents to the NFL? UCF, I don't think that they've been on the same level since they had their undefeated season. And then BYU, I think, they've had really exceptional quarterback play. There was the Zach Wilson days and then Jaron Hall. What is it going to be like with Keaton Slovis at quarterback? Kalani Sitake going to have to figure some of that out, that dynamic. Hey, they're finally in a conference and really get to see what they can do there. So it's really going to be interesting, the dynamic here with a lot of this playing out. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into things. We're going to take a look at each team's draft eligible prospects, really just kind of break everything down, what to expect, and then ultimately give you my thoughts on really how that conference shakes out. So when we look at Texas, you've got Quinn Ewers, the quarterback, 6'2", 204 pounds. This is a guy, look, a redshirt sophomore, all the hype, all the hoopla coming from Ohio State. This guy, was a 5-star quarterback. Obviously, everyone talking about him. He lands in Texas and really had Alabama on the ropes, right? I mean, he really looked the part, was playing very well, and I think that was one of the things that everyone got excited about was, man, Quinn Ewers, it looks like he's going to be the real deal. Then he gets hurt. Hudson Carr has to come in. Ultimately, Nick Saban is able to eke out the victory there with Bryce Young leading that offense. But consistency was a huge problem. Through 10 games, 2,100 yards passing, 58.1% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. This was a guy that didn't show off too much, in terms of the wheels. A guy that I think did a better job manipulating the pocket, but he's not a guy that's going to beat you with his legs. It's crazy for as good as Quinn Ewers has been, in terms of the hype train. There's talk that Arch Manning sitting behind him. The fact that this true freshman, I think, is making $4 million, on his NIL deal, and he hasn't even taken a collegiate snap yet. There's going to be pressure. If Quinn Ewers struggles, I think there's going to be pressure to put Arch Manning in, which, is crazy because there's a chance if Quinn Ewers has a big year, can put it all together and really show he can challenge defenses vertically, show that he can make those throws to the wide side of the field on a line, show those pinpoint accuracy, being able to layer those throws over the linebacker, in front of the safety. Those are going to be throws that he needs to make on a consistent basis there for Texas. And, that's going to be the big question mark, is who's going to be the quarterback of the Texas Longhorns by season's end. But I think what you do have, and what's shaping up for him, is he's got a lot of talented receivers at his disposal. I think number one on that list is going to be Xavier Worthy. 6'1", 164 pounds. This is a guy that I think can beat you on the outside. He can beat you in the slot. Very dynamic receiver. A guy that I think has a great chance to challenge for a first-round spot at that wide receiver position. A guy that, look, he's so sudden with the route running. You can see that as a punt returner as well. But then you pair him up with a huge receiver in A.D. Mitchell coming over from Georgia, 6'4", 195 pounds. And A.D. Mitchell, a guy that wasn't used a ton over there, 38 catches, 560 yards, 7 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. This is a kid that's coming in. I think he really wants to showcase his talent. The orange-white game for Texas, he looked great. There was a great one-handed catch in the end zone. I think this is a guy that is going to be able to use that size, really building some chemistry there with Quinn Ewers. This will be another deep threat, kind of taking some pressure off Xavier Worthy. And then you've got Jordan Whittington, 6'1", 205, a physical receiver, 50 catches, 652 yards this past season. This is a guy, some inopportune drops. I think that's something that's really hurt him. I look at Whittington as a day 3 type of guy. He was the number 2 receiver a season ago. I think now he'll probably be number 3 on that list. I think this is a guy that can attack the underneath routes, show everyone that he can be a slot receiver and really be able to kind of add things to that arsenal, that repertoire, if you will. And then there's Ja'Tavion Sanders. Big number 0, 6'4", 241, the junior. He was number 3 in terms of receiving, 54 catches, 613 yards, 5 touchdowns. This is a guy that's going to be able to stretch the seam coming down the field. I think that's something that is going to be evident. You're going to see him, making plays, coming across the field, breaking tackles, getting down the field as well. But I think he's really improving as an inline blocker. I think really the question is who's going to be that number tight end behind Brock Bowers. It's going to be Ja'Tavion Sanders, I believe. And a big year for him. I think we could be talking about him as a fringe first rounder, likely a second round pick. But I think he's a guy that is going to be a vital weapon for Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, whoever's going to be lining up there at quarterback. The big question mark is going to be that running game. You got to replace Bijan Robinson. You got to replace Roschon Johnson. How do you replace the Doak Walker Award-winning running back, and then obviously Roschon as the backup? That's a lot of yards on the ground. That's basically over 2,000 yards on the ground. 350 carries, 23 touchdowns. So Jonathan Brooks, the sophomore, has his work cut out for him. 340 yards in his career. You got Keelan Robinson, a guy that came over from Alabama. CJ Baxter is the nation's number 1 running back, as a freshman. So I think that's going to be the big question mark is, teams, you're going to have to be able to run the football. And that's going to be huge for Quinn Ewers, especially a guy that can't necessarily create with his legs. I just saw a stat, and as I'm talking here, Lindy Sports noted that Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson accounted for 87% of the rushing yards for Texas last season. These kids, these young guys, are going to have to step up and be able to take some of the pressure off the quarterback spot. Because, look, if teams are rushing 3 and dropping 8, and Quinn can't necessarily create on his own with his feet, he's going to have to be able to be patient. And the timing routes aren't always going to be there. He's going to have to be patient for a receiver to come open. They're going to have to get creative with some of their routes to get that passing attack going. So I think that's going to be huge for them is can they really get the ball going on the ground. One of the things that I will say is they return 4 starters. The left side is intact. Kelvin Banks, I think a guy that we'll be talking about in next year's draft, only a sophomore. Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, left guard in the center. But the guy I'm keeping an eye on is the big right tackle, number 70, Christian Jones, 6'6", 322 pounds. This is a guy I think can be a right tackle at the next level. Good power in his game. I think underrated athleticism as well. I think he's the guy that's really going to be the leader of this offensive line, and a guy, I expect Texas to run right behind number 70 early and often. Now you look at the defensive side of the football, and they return a lot of starters, a lot of veteran leadership there. They get a couple of transfers in as well. I think this defense has a chance to be very opportunistic, and if they get a team on its heels, that's something that they need to take advantage of. But this was a team that struggled to put pressure on the quarterback, 71st in sacks a season ago. When you look at this, though, they're going to be led by Barryn Sorrell up front. 6'4", 262 pounds, the jack, a guy that I think can play with his hand in the dirt. He could also rush coming off the edge. 5.5 sacks a season ago. This is a guy who I think is primed and ready to have a big year. 9 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hurries, and a forced fumble. Thank you, Lindy Sports, for the stats as well. This is a guy, again, he has to have a big year for me to be in consideration as a top 5 pass rusher. I think he has the ability, he has the potential, but we just haven't seen him put everything together and be that dominant force. And that's really what I'm looking for out of Barryn Sorrell. But look, make no mistake, he's a guy that if he has a big year, double-digit sacks, we could be talking about him as a first-round pick. Now, up front, obviously they've lost Keandre Coburn. Moro Ojomo is no longer there as well. But you have big number 93, Devondre Sweat, 6'4", 355 pounds. This dude is massive. A guy that is just going to eat up a ton of blockers. A guy that moves pretty well for his size, which is quite surprising when you watch the guy move. But I think he's a better prospect than Keandre Coburn. I'm looking forward to seeing what Sweat can do this year. Really, he's got a hold of the starting spot there in the middle of that defense. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Byron Murphy, 6'1", 300, only a junior, but a guy that I think they're really counting on him to have a big year. And I'll tell you, the guy that for me might be the MVP of this defense is Jaylan Ford, big number 41, 6'3", 236 pounds, the middle linebacker. This is a guy if you turned on the film and tried to watch DeMarvion Overshown, Jaylan Ford was the guy that was flashing. 119 tackles, 10 tackles for loss. Have 4 interceptions as well. A guy that had a nose for the football. Just seemed to be all over the field. And that was the thing that was so impressive. That breakout season, first team all Big 12. He's got to step up and show that he can have a repeat performance. If he does that, this is the guy, to me, he's not getting out of the second round. There are a lot of people that I've seen have him in the 5th, 6th round. I just look at him, I see the instincts, I see his ability to be a three down performer, a guy that can get after the quarterback a little bit, makes a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage, has good range, instinctive in coverage as well, does a great job getting himself in a position to make a play on the football. I think this defense, if Jaylan Ford has a big year, the defense, is really going to rally around him and could have we could be in for a big season for them. David Benda, 6', 231. I think they'll be relying on him to step up there at the other linebacker spot, taking over for Overshown. Jahdae Barron, the star backer, 5'11", 191 pounds. This is a guy that, 11.5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, a guy that likes to play around the line of scrimmage. I think he's going to have a solid year. Look, Jalen Catalon, the strong safety, the name sounds familiar, played in the SEC with Arkansas, 5'10", 194 pounds, has been bitten by the injury bug. But when healthy, this guy at one point was one of the top safeties in all of college football. Especially coming after that 2020 season, 99 tackles, 3 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, the guy that showed that he had exceptional range, but then the ball skills. In 2 seasons there at Arkansas, had 5 interceptions, played in just 1 game in 2022, went down to injury. If he can show that he is all the way back from the injury, I think Jalen Catalon, you pair him up with Jadace Barryn, and they could be in for a huge season, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do. Then there's Gavin Holmes. Gavin Holmes is another guy that moved in there at that cornerback spot, a guy that transferred from Wake Forest. He's a guy that only a junior, 5'11", 168, a guy that I'm going to be keeping an eye out, see what he can do opposite Ryan Watts. Now, Ryan Watts is a guy, 6'3", 203, that's a bigger corner. Really want to watch those hips, his ability to turn and run with receivers. Didn't really see a ton of action his way. Had a pick and 3 pass breakups this past season in his first year at Texas after coming over from Ohio State. But I expect to see Ryan Watts having a big year for Texas. I think they're expecting him to really be one of the leaders there on that defense. And then Jaron Thompson, the free safety, 6 foot, 180 pounds, another senior. He's the 3rd leading tackler on the team, and a guy that I think can be another veteran presence on the defense. So when you look at this team, they've got a lot of talent there at the skill positions, a younger but experienced offensive line that's led by Christian Jones. Question marks there at the running back spot. Can Quinn Ewers put it all together? Are they going to have to rely on the true freshman Arch Manning? Generational talent or not, he's still going to be a true freshman. And then defensively, a lot of seniors. It's a senior-laden defense. There are some question marks and some holes, but I think Texas is primed for a big year if they can figure out that offense and not be so one-dimensional. I'd say for the rest of the country, the rest of the Big 12 for sure, watch out for Texas, and I think they'll have some nice momentum going into the SEC. I think next on my list has to be Oklahoma. The Sooners, they're heading out to the SEC with Texas, and this is a team, look, they struggled under Brent Venables last season. Just 6 wins, 6-7, 3-6 in Big 12 play. This was a team that I think was gutted after the surprising move, Lincoln Riley moving out to USC. But Venables, I think he really rallied, brought in a lot of players a season ago. I think you look at this team now, and the defense, I think he's got it back to where he wants it to be. I think the defense took a step forward with Venables, Ted Roof. No longer do you have Alex Grinch in there. We'll be talking about him a little bit and his defense when we talk about the Trojans here in a couple of episodes. But I look at OU, and the big question mark for me is really that passing game on offense. You look at Dillon Gabriel, 5'11", 207 pounds, the senior, in his first year with the Sooners after transferring from UCF. Over 3,100 yards passing, 25 touchdowns with 6 interceptions. When I look at Dillon Gabriel, the big question mark for me is consistency. Can he really elevate the game? He was 61% as a passer there at UCF. Improved it a little bit to 63%, but it's one of those things to where he had some open receivers and missed them. And gone is Marvin Mims, gone is Theo Weiss. Mims is off to the Denver Broncos, and then Theo Weiss, he's transferred to Missouri. So the thing with it is Dillon Gabriel, look, that front shoulder wants to come up a lot, sails a lot of passes, wide open guys, and he is overthrowing them by 3-4 yards. We've seen the OU fan base, the student section, they'll turn on a quarterback if they're not seeing what they want out of their quarterback. We saw that with Caleb Williams taking over for Spencer Rattler. They were asking for Caleb Williams. How long will it be if Dillon Gabriel can't perform before we'll see Jackson Arnold, the 5-star quarterback, 6'1", 205? I think there's a good chance that we could see Jackson Arnold step in if Dillon Gabriel can't hit those open receivers like he did struggled with last season. The receiving core, who's going to be the number one? Who's going to be the alpha? That's going to be the big question mark. Jaleel Farouk is the leading returner in that group. 6'1", 207, the junior. I think kind of an up and down year, but really finished the season strong. And that's going to be the big thing. I think, building upon that, getting another year working with Dillon Gabriel, I think is also going to be huge. But 37 catches, 466 yards, 5 touchdowns. This is an explosive guy. I think, we're waiting for him to really kind of have that breakout. Only a junior, so he could return. You also look at Andrell Anthony, transferred in from Michigan. This guy is a speedster on the outside. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in this offense. I think he could end up being the number one, and really give Gabriel a guy that can be a blazing threat on the outside. Just keep an eye out for him. He's going to be a dynamic threat, and like I said, he could end up being that number one wideout. And then you have Drake Stoops, Bob Stoops' son, 39 catches, 393 yards, 3 touchdowns a season ago. The senior, 5'10", 185 pounds. Not the biggest guy by any means, but a guy that plays with the biggest heart, and a guy that just knows how to get open. I mean, he's a coach's son. Don't rule him out at the next level. That's one of the things that he's a guy that may not get drafted, but even as an undrafted free agent, I think he's the guy that could end up working his way onto a roster, even if it's on a practice squad starting out. This is a guy that I think OU can't keep him off the field, and he's a guy, even with a lot of the other playmakers, keep an eye out for him. Jaden Gibson, the sophomore, he saw a little bit of action as a freshman. I think Gavin Freeman, another slot guy, looks just like Drake Stoops. He's a Stoops clone. LV Bunkley Shelton, the transfer from Arizona State, I think they're expecting him to have a bigger impact this year. So again, there's some question marks. Stoops is going to be reliable. Can Farouk step up? Can Anthony be that number one receiver? I think it's really, there are some question marks there. I think the skill positions, again, you look at the running back spot. You lose the production from Eric Gray. Eric Gray was a phenomenal running back for them. Over 1,300 yards on the ground, 11 touchdowns, 6.4 yards per carry. He's on to the NFL now. So Javonte Barnes is going to get the first crack at things. He was the number 2 running back, 519 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns, 6'2", 207. Only a sophomore. Look, he's going to be sharing the backfield with Gavin Sawchuk, who himself is a sophomore. Got some playing time a season ago, and I think that duo is really going to be counted upon to take some of that pressure off Dillon Gabriel. If everything's firing on all cylinders, this is an offense that could get downhill. When you look at Barnes and Sawchuk, they both went over 100 yards against Florida State in the bowl game. So I think there is room for there is some optimism there in Norman. And then you look at this offensive line. The offensive line, it can be very talented. Walter Rouse coming over from Stanford, 6'6", 315. This is a guy that's been battling some injuries, and he's finally there. He can anchor that left side of the line. Opposite him on the right side is Tyler Guyton, 6'7", 316, a junior, but a guy that I think has the potential to be the next really solid OU tackle. Look, I think teams are going to be looking at OU, the development of their offensive tackles, under Coach Beedenbaugh. Bill Beedenbaugh, Anton Harrison, his development over the last couple of years to ultimately get him drafted in round number 1. And the list can go on and on with all of the offensive linemen that have made it to the league under Coach Beedenbaugh. I think these are two guys, Walter Rouse, if he can stay healthy, he and Tyler Guyton, I think you'll have a really solid pair of bookends. Andrew Rain, to me, 6'4", 313, is one of the better centers in the league. Keep an eye out there. At the guard spot, McCabe Matower has to play much more consistent. 6'4", 310, the senior, came over from Cal. He's the guy that to me right now is the big question mark on the line. Savion Byrd is likely going to be the starter there opposite him at the right guard spot, 6'5", 283, the sophomore. I don't see an issue there on the right side of the line. I think the weakness is going to be Matower, but this is a line that has a lot of potential. I think they can really give Dillon Gabriel a lot of time. I think they can also be pretty solid in the running game. So this is a team, that you look at the offense, you may not be, the names don't really pop out, but they can be sneaky good. And then you look at the tight end Austin Stogner. We didn't even talk about him, but really a solid inline blocker at tight end. 6'6", 255, transferred to South Carolina with Spencer Rattler. Now he's back where he should be at OU, taking over for Braden Willis, who moved on to the NFL himself. And with Stogner, you're going to get a big physical tight end, a guy that can be a weapon over the middle of the field. Defensively, this is where I think OU can really step up and have a much better year this season. The pass rush trio of Ethan Downs, Reggie Grimes, Rondell, Bothroyd has a chance to be really special for this group. With Downs, 13.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 6'4", 257. This is a dude that plays with his hair on fire. Always flying around to the football. He's a lot of fun to watch, a guy that I think can play with his hand in the dirt, can also play standing up. Reggie Grimes, similar player, 6'4", 258. And look, 7.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. He's another guy that I think can really have a breakout year, double-digit sack potential. But I think the big steal for them, a lot of people talk about Deshaun McCullough, the sophomore linebacker, 6'5", 252, could really put some pressure on the quarterback. But Rondell Bothroyd, to me, was one of the really solid pickups there for OU in the transfer portal, coming over from Wake Forest, 6'4", 258. And look, in the last 2 seasons, 24.5 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, a guy that just knows how to get after the quarterback, excellent motor. You look at this trio, and I think it's really a scary group, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do, really getting pressure on the quarterback. Keep an eye out for that. They get Jacob Lacey, the senior defensive tackle from Notre Dame, undersized at 6'1", 272, but keep an eye out for the nose tackle, Isaiah Coe, 6'2", 308. A guy that I think can really hold the point of attack pretty well. I think this is a year that the Will, Danny Stutsman, needs to have a huge season. Now, Danny Stutsman, 125 tackles a season ago, and when you watch him play, number 28, seemed to be all over the field, would make plays left and right. I think he had, 16 tackles against Kent State. He just seemed to be anybody that was making a play around the line of scrimmage, it was going to be Danny Stutsman. But this guy struggled at times. He seemed to be lost. Seemed to be, when he just couldn't, when he had to overthink things, it wasn't just about see ball, hit ball. He really struggled at times in the offense. So I think another year working with Brent Venables and Ted Roof is really going to benefit him. I think he got lost at times in coverage as well, turning his back, and a lot of missed tackles. When you think about it, 125 tackles, and he missed a bunch of tackles. So we could have been talking about closer to 140 tackles. I think he's primed for a huge year, and if he does that, then this is a guy that we could see come out after the junior season and be a second-round pick. And look, he's got the size and he's got the speed and ability. Could he be a first-rounder? Maybe. But he's going to have to really show that he's put that 2022 season behind him in terms of making a lot of those mental errors. A sophomore to make a note of is Jaron Kanik, 6'2", 227, very athletic linebacker. So he'll be an interesting guy to keep an eye out for as well. You've got Woody Washington, the 5'11", 193-pound corner. Veteran presence there in the secondary. But the guy that I'm really watching for is the free safety, Billy Bowman. 5'10", 194, the junior. This is a guy, 3 interceptions a season ago, the unquestioned leader of that secondary. And then you bring in Reggie Pearson, the Texas Tech transfer. I love this pickup as well. He's a guy that may not even start. You've got Key Lawrence, who himself was a transfer from Tennessee. But when you look at Reggie Pearson, he came from Wisconsin to Texas Tech, played 2 years there, a guy that showed off some pretty decent ball skills for the Red Raiders. I think what OU is doing, they've really got a lot of veteran presence there on the back end of the defense, and the best player may actually be the true freshman, Peyton Bowen, 6 foot 185, heat-seeking missile, flying around making plays. So OU, they're not quite there with Texas, I would say, because there are some question marks there with the skill position players. I think the offensive line is actually better than what Texas has. I think when you look at the depth, there with OU. I think they may have more depth on defense than Texas. So it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic. I think OU has a chance to supplant Texas at the top of the Big 12 Conference in their swan song as the two programs move to the Southeastern Conference. But there are still a lot of question marks, and it's really going to come down to whether or not you can get the veteran leadership from Dillon Gabriel, or if you're going to have to rely on a freshman. It's really the same story that Texas has with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see play out. Now you look at K-State. You move up from Norman, Oklahoma to Manhattan, Kansas, and he really didn't skip a beat from Bill Snyder. That's one of the things. You look at it, it's a similar offense and defense, the same type of mindset, and that, they're tough as nails, man. And you look at Will Howard, took over the starting job from Adrian Martinez, and this is a guy, look, he's a big, strong-arm quarterback. I think he's underrated. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. He's got, really good size. At the quarterback spot, it's 6'5", 242 pounds, a senior. He's got really good arm strength. I think that's something else that you see. He's got to improve the completion percentage. I think that's really the biggest thing. He's going to be developing with the offensive coordinator, Collin Klein. I think it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic there. The receiving core, there's some question marks. He's got Keegan Johnson, the transfer from Iowa, only a sophomore. He's going to be teaming with Phillip Brooks, taking over for Malik Knowles. But Phillip Brooks, he's the diminutive one, 5'8", 170 pounds, 587 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns a season ago. He's a little guy, could be a slot receiver type. I think he's a fringe, possibly could get drafted. More than likely he's going to be a priority free agent, though. I think the tight end, Ben Sinet, he's 6'4", 245, only a junior. Could he decide to come out? I think there's definitely a possibility. This is a guy who is sneaky athletic and very physical at the point of attack as a blocker. But look, 31 catches, 447 yards. He's a guy that I think could end up being one of the focal points of this offense, and we'll be talking about Sinet as a budding star. So even if he doesn't leave for the NFL, he's a guy that we'll be talking about for a long time. Now you have to replace the production of Deuce Vaughn at running back, over 1,500 yards on the ground and 9 touchdowns. This dude, diminutive, yes, but man, he's going to be making all kinds of plays there at Dallas, the 6th-round pick. DJ Giddens is taking over for him. This was a guy that was the 3rd leading rusher behind Vaughn and Adrian Martinez. 518 yards on the ground and 6 touchdowns, only a sophomore. I mentioned him because I think that's, they're going to be relying on him. But then you also get Treshaun Ward from Florida State. Treshaun Ward is a senior, and he's going to bring some of that experience and physicality to the running back group as well. But they're going to be running behind a veteran offensive line. This may actually be the best line in the Big 12. I think they're really going to challenge Oklahoma for that spot. They're led by Cooper Beebe, the left guard, 6'4", 332 pounds. This is a dude that is physical at the point of attack. He'll maul you. He'll drive you off the football. Athletic, though, can climb to the second level. You see him pulling. This guy not only plays guard, he can play tackle. He's had to kick outside 2 tackle due to injury and showcase some pretty good feet, but I think his home is at the guard spot, and to me, I think he's one of those guards that could be a first-round pick when it's all said and done. You have KT Leviston, the left tackle, 6'5", 330 pounds, also a senior. I think he's underrated as a pass protector. Another guy that can be very physical in the ground game. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch as well. That duo there on the left side of that line. Just imagine Giddens and Ward running behind that group. But then you have Hayden Gillum, the center, 6'3", 290. Christian Duffy, the right tackle, 6'5", 310. Keep an eye on the two of them. They're both seniors. You have Hadley Panzer is the one junior at right guard. But this is a group, very veteran-laden group, and a team that they're going to want to run the ball early and often to set up that pass for Will Howard. Defensively, I think there's some question marks, and that's really what's going to separate them, I believe. Brendan Mott, 6'5", 240, the guy that can get after the quarterback a little bit. 6 sacks a season ago, was second to Felix Anadike. Uzoma, 7 tackles for loss as well, was second in that group on top of that. But really the guy that's going to be a lot of fun to watch is that linebacker Austin Moore, number 41. 6'1", 219 pounds. This dude he's physical at the point of attack. He's a guy that flies around and makes plays. Led the team in tackles with 87, 10 tackles for loss. I think he's undersized, but a guy that he's tough as nails, and that's what's going to be a lot of fun. I think he and his running mate Daniel Green, who's 6'3", 245, they're going to be the leaders of this defense. Obviously, you have Khalid Duke at 6'4", 246, 3 sacks a season ago. I think we're expecting to see a much bigger year out of him. You wanted to see Duke opposite FAU. Unfortunately, we just didn't see the production that we were expecting from him last year. The secondary, obviously, when you lose a guy like Julius Brents, you're going to be feeling it. There's some young guys there at that cornerback position, even at safety. VJ Payne, only a sophomore, 6'3", 200. He's going to be a guy that they're going to be leaning on. But Kobe Savage, 5'11", 206 pounds, guy that had 3 interceptions a season ago, second on the team. And, he's a guy that I'll be curious to see what he can do. He can fly around. He can make some plays on the back end of the defense, really as kind of that deep safety. But look, that cornerback spot really needs to hold up with a passing attack. They also need to be able to put pressure on the quarterback. That's going to be a big question mark. Really kind of nervous about that for K-State. But, I think offensively they can really flip the script on teams, really keep the possession, keep the football on their side, and make it difficult for teams to have very many possessions. I think that's one of the keys for K-State is really ball control, especially until that defense can really get their legs. But keep an eye out for the linebackers, Green and Moore. I think after that, TCU, we could take a look at them, but I'm going to actually take a look at Kansas next. Kansas has, it's intriguing to me. You look at Lance Leipold, what they were able to do a season ago. Yeah, it was 6-7. And they finished 3-6 in the Big 12 play, but they rattled off 5 wins. And they beat Duke, they beat Iowa State, they beat Houston, who's now in the Big 12. They also beat West Virginia to start. I know West Virginia, not the strongest team by any means, but they only lost by 7 to TCU, by 10 to Oklahoma, 12 to Baylor. This is a team that could have had a much better record. They even lost, in the bowl game, the Liberty Bowl, 55-53. Jason Bean really filled in admirably because, the guy is Jalen Daniels. That's going to be the stud. 6 foot, 215 pounds. He's a junior now, so that does make him draft eligible. Is he going to come out and enter the draft? Not likely. I think he's a guy that still needs to develop as a passer. But I'll tell you what, over 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He was such a playmaker and so much fun to watch that he really put Kansas on the map, Kansas football. You look at him, this last season, also 66.1% completion percentage, and then, his ground game, over 400 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns, and that's through 9 games. If he can stay healthy, that's really going to help things there for Kansas. That's going to be huge for them. But the running back, Devin Neal, this is a guy, he's a top 10 running back, in my opinion. Over 1,000 yards on the ground a season ago, 9 touchdowns. But look, Devin Neal also showed that he can catch the football out of the backfield a little bit. He was a guy that could be a safety valve there for Bean and Jalen Daniels. 21 receptions this past season. I expect that number to go up. I think they'll really count on Devin Neal to have a big year this year. And then you look at the receiving core. I think an underrated group, all juniors. They're all probably going to come back for another year. But Lawrence Arnold, Quentin Skinner, Luke Grimm, that's going to give Jalen Daniels a lot of weapons. Grimm was the leader with 623 yards and 6 touchdowns this past year. But then, a tight end, if you listened to my podcast last year, I thought he was going to actually enter the draft. It was Mason Fairchild. Mason Fairchild is, I think, an underrated tight end. People didn't really talk about him at 6'5", 260 pounds. Not the most athletically gifted guy by any means, but he just always seemed to make plays. A guy that always seemed to be down the seam, showed excellent hands, his ability to adjust to the football in the air. I think Mason Fairchild is going to be primed for another big season. He was a guy that they really wanted to focus on and get the football to. I expect to see more out of that from him. And then they also get Jared Casey from TCU. he's going to be somebody that I think can be physical in the ground game for them as well, and offers a little bit there as a pass protector. I thought they got a big signing in the transfer portal as well with the addition of Logan Brown, 6'6", 320-pound junior from Wisconsin. I think that's a huge, look, he was a former 5-star tackle. I expect him to have a big year there, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him there at that left tackle spot. Only a junior, but a big year from him. We could be talking about him potentially entering the draft. I think the other veteran up front is going to be Mike Nowitzki, the center, 6'5", 305. He'll probably be the leader of that group. And then defensively, this is going to be the big question mark for me. They're going to have to replace, Lonnie Phelps and the production there. I think that's going to be a huge question mark. Can they get to the quarterback? Look, their defense gave up 35.6 points per game. That's pretty scary. Bend but don't break. I think they broke more often than they bent. They're going to be very young up front. That's going to be the question mark. But man, they return everybody on the back of the defense. You've got Rich Miller at linebacker, 6'1", 230. Tywan Berryhill, 6'2", 230. Berryhill only a junior. Those are going to be your playmakers at that linebacker position. In the secondary, it's going to be led by Kenny Logan, 6 foot 205, 106 tackles a season ago. The thing with Kenny Logan is he's got to cut down on the missed tackles. That's the big thing for him. But a guy that always seems to be around the football, has a nose for the ball. Craig Young, forgot to mention him at that linebacker spot, 6'4", 225 pounds. This is a guy that led the team as a returner in sacks with 4.5. They're going to need him to get after the quarterback early and often. A couple of juniors of note in the secondary. Cobee Bryant, that's spelled C-O-B-E Bryant. Not to be confused with C-O-B-Y Bryant, who entered the league. Or, obviously, the late, great Cobee Bryant, K-O-B-E, the one and only. But with Cobee Bryant of Kansas lore, 6 foot, 175 pounds, 3 interceptions from a season ago. He's a guy that I think is primed for a huge year. Could potentially find his way into that conversation in the top 12 or so corners in all of college football. And then Mello Dotson, he's 6'1", 185 pounds. At that cornerback position, he's a guy that I think they're also going to be relying on to make some plays there on the back end. And look, Kansas, the big thing for them is they're going to have to put pressure on the quarterback, and that secondary is going to have to hold up. Big question marks there, but it's something that I'm going to be excited to see how it plays out for them. I think next on my list, probably going to be TCU. I mean, it kind of has to, right? Especially after the season that they had last year. And with TCU, obviously they're going to be returning Chandler Morris, 6 foot, 195 pounds. This was a guy that was really supposed to be the starter. He had actually taken over for Max Duggan and has the season-ending injury, and obviously we know the rest is history. But Chandler Morris, he's it's going to be a lot of fun to see what he can do now. For Sonny Dykes, I think Sonny Dykes has built a powerhouse here. And so, it may be just a matter of reloading rather than rebuilding. At the running back spot, you have to replace 2 running backs. You have to replace Kendre Miller, your 1,400 yard, 17 touchdown running back, and then Imari DiMercado, over 600 yards himself. So obviously Imani Bailey is going to be stepping in, 5'9", 200 pounds, a junior. They also have Trey Sanders coming in from Alabama, so I think that's a big get for them. At the receiving core, obviously you've got to replace Quentin Johnson. That's going to be tough to do. Tay Barber, Darius Davis as well. So a lot of guys at that receiving spot that are going to be gone. Savion Williams is a big physical dude, 6'5", 215 pounds. Only a junior, but a guy who's a physical freak. I think that's one of the things that definitely stands out when you watch him play is, the catch radius is insane. They also get JoJo Earl transferring in from Alabama, 5'10", 170 pounds, only a junior, but he's a guy that I think they'll be relying upon to make some plays there at that receiver spot. And then when you look at the tight end, you've got Jared Wiley, big, physical, 6'7", 255 pounds. I expect Jared Wiley to have a big year. Look, he caught 24 passes a season ago. He played at Texas, and the 3 years at Texas, he did not see 24 passes thrown his way. So I think that's something that I'm really going to be excited to see kind of how that plays out. And then you look at the offensive line. I think you've got a pair of tackles in Brandon Coleman and Andrew Coker who are draft worthy. Coleman is 6'6", 325 pounds, a guy that I think can kick inside the guard as well. And then Coker, only a junior, but 6'7", 315. Excellent length there. I think there's going to be some question marks along the interior of that line. They've got to replace some starters there. So that's going to be kind of a question mark for them. Defensively, there are also some questions. You lose some veteran leadership. Dylan Horton, D. Winters, Trey Hodges, Tomlinson are all gone. So you have to replace those guys. Obviously, you have Demonic Williams, the 6'2", 320-pound defensive tackle, only a sophomore. This dude at that nose tackle spot was a freshman All-American. He's a dude, and we'll be talking about him in next year's draft. The linebackers, you got Johnny Hodges and Jamoy Hodge. Hodges, only a junior, 6'2", 240, the transfer from Navy. He led the team in tackles a season ago with 87. Jamoy Hodge was third on the team with 82, 6'2", 245. I think he needs to show that he can drop into coverage a little bit more. That was one of the things that you really wanted to see from Jamoy Hodge. I think he got burned way too many times. He's going to have to improve there, but does make a lot of plays around the line of scrimmage, as does Hodges, a guy that likes to shoot gaps and get behind the line of scrimmage. 9.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks for Hodges, 4.5 sacks as well for Jamoy Hodge. And then you get to the secondary. I think Josh Newton is the guy that has a chance to be special at that cornerback spot. 6 foot, 195 pounds. Had three interceptions a season ago. He's the guy. I love the ball skills. I love his ability to go up, high point the football, attack the ball in the air. And then the safeties. They got a veteran group there at the safety spot. Miller Bradford's going to be your nickel, 5'11", 190 pounds. But I think it's really going to be about Mark Perry and Bud Clark. Clark's the bigger guy, 6'2", 190, only a sophomore. The free safety, 5 interceptions a season ago. He's a no pun intended, but a budding star. Mark Perry is going to be your senior, 6 foot, 215, the strong safety, more physical presence on the back end of the defense. He's a 5th-year senior, 14 starts a season ago. He's going to be a guy to me that I think has a chance to be a day 3 selection. So keep an eye out there for him. Josh Newton, on the other hand, I think this is a guy that has a chance to be in that first-round conversation with a big year there at the cornerback spot. Jamoy Hodge, for me, is a fringe day 3 guy. I think he really needs to elevate his game to really be in that conversation. If we're talking Brandon Coleman, I think Brandon Coleman's a guy that's comfortably in that probably 5th round range, but I think he has a chance to really elevate his stock. Could potentially be on the back end of day 2. That's really kind of where his ceiling might be when we're talking about him and his draft stock. I think next on the list has to be the Texas Tech Red Raiders. This is a team that I think really overachieved a season ago, 8-5 on the year. And, I think Joey McGuire has done an excellent job with the Red Raiders in his first season, coming over really from the high school ranks. And I look at this team, Donovan Smith, really that was the big question mark is that quarterback spot, right? Who's going to be playing? What's it going to look like? Donovan Smith is gone. Tyler Shuck is back, though, back at the helm. The transfer from Oregon came in to Texas Tech, off and on as a starter. Over 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Needs to cut down on the mistakes. He's an athletic guy, but what I'm really excited about is there's a lot of talent there at the skill position. Namely Jaron Bradley, 6'5", 215 pounds. He's big. He's physical. He has a tremendous wingspan. A guy that can get vertical down the field as well. Adjust well to the football in the air. 51 catches, 744 yards, and 6 touchdowns a season ago. I'm expecting a big year out of him. Same goes for Miles Price, 5'10", 190 pounds. If I look at Bradley and I say that this is a guy that is probably a 3rd, 4th round pick, Miles Price has a chance to kind of sneak into the back end of day number 3. I think Baylor Cupp, the tight end, 6'6", 260 pounds. We could be talking about him as one of those sleeper tight ends for the draft as well. Running back spot, you got Taj Brooks, 5'11", 230 pounds. Physical dude, 691 yards, 7 touchdowns a season ago. He's going to be counted upon to really kind of take some of that pressure off Tyler Shough. Offensive line, kind of an up and down group, but they've got 3 starters that are returning. When you're looking at probably the best prospect for the NFL, might be the right tackle, Caleb Rogers, 6'5", 305. He'll be the guy to really be counted upon. O-line needs to kind of get things going. I think they struggled with some inconsistency, some injuries. They're going to have to really step up and have a big year. Now the defense is where I really get excited. Obviously, a season ago you had Tyree Wilson, the number 7 overall pick of the Las Vegas Raiders, and this season there's still going to be a lot of guys up front. When you talk about the freaks list with Bruce Feldman, I think there are a couple of guys that jump out. One of those is going to be Myles Cole. Obviously Tyree Wilson was on that list a season ago, and Myles Cole looks a lot like that. He's 6'6", he's 285 pounds, wingspan at 86 inches. I mean, that's insane. Max speed was at a 20.3. This is a guy that transferred from Louisiana Monroe, and had 12 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hurries, and a block kick. They're hoping to see what he can do coming in. Can he take over and fill some of that void left by Tyree Wilson? But he's not the only freak on that list. Jaylan Hutchings is another guy. Look, only 6 foot, 295, 300, somewhere around there, nose tackle. But this is a guy that can get after it. 500-pound bench press, 700-pound squat, but also been clocked at 18 miles an hour. Wait, are you serious? Good Lord. 50 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. A guy that can definitely get after both the quarterback and in the ground game, but he's got a running mate, and a guy that actually is the top sack artist returning, and that's Tony Bradford Jr. 6'1", 305. These are guys that aren't the biggest, in terms of height and stature, but these are guys that know how to get after the quarterback. When you think about it, when you combine for 82 tackles and 7 sacks, you've got something going there. So if Myles Cole can help really put some pressure on the quarterback, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what this group can do. That linebacker spot, they bring in Steve Linton, 6'5", 235. I want to say he came from Syracuse. Jacob Rodriguez, 6'1", 245 pounds. This is a guy that really kind of burst onto the scene and showed that he could make some plays. Really kind of a guy that was a former offensive player, but he really started playing well there for Texas Tech. Then you have Josiah Pierre, 6'2", 245. These are linebackers, are veteran presence there for this group, so keep an eye out for them. Rashad Williams is 6'3", 205-pound corner. I think he has some potential there for the league. The linebackers, I don't know that any of those guys are ultimately going to get drafted. I think you're expecting to maybe see some big years from them. I think it's really going to take a huge year from any of them if they are going to hear their names drafted. But Rashad Williams, he transferred from UCLA, and look, 20 pass breakups in his career, just the 1 interception a season ago. He's the guy that I think needs to elevate his game. You've got Malik Dunlap as well, 6'3", 220 pounds. Yes, 6'3", 220 pounds, playing corner. The size, I look at him, I'm like, that's going to be a safety at the next level if I've ever seen one. Transferred in from NC State, played the last 2 years there at Texas Tech, 12 pass breakups. This past season, 26 in his career. Just kind of an intriguing guy. He's got tremendous size. Want to really keep an eye on him, and how stiff in the hips is he going to be? That's going to be the big question mark, I think, that everyone's going to have. And then you have Dadrian Taylor Demerson, the 5'11", 195-pound free safety, a guy that flies around, 74 tackles a season ago. I think they're counting on him to step up and have a big year. And then Tyler Owens, he's 6'2", 205, a senior, playing that boundary safety spot, and another guy that made the freaks list. When you talk about Bruce Feldman's freaks list, you're happy if you have one. Texas Tech actually had 3 on their defense. This guy, in the TaxAct Bowl, TaxAct Texas Bowl, Bruce notes that this guy had 6 tackles. Had his first career interception, had a forced fumble. A guy that has over 40-inch vertical leap and can run more than 23 miles per hour in a game. Obviously, that's staggering. A guy that transferred in from Texas. Keep an eye on Tyler Owens. He's another guy that, when you lose a guy like Reggie Pearson, that veteran presence on the back end, they're going to be relying on Tyler Owens to have a big year. And I think that's something that we'll definitely have to keep an eye out for sure. I think next on the list, this is going to be the first of the newcomers, and that's going to be BYU. When you look at BYU, obviously they have to replace Jaren Hall. That's the big question mark. What's going to happen there? And you look at Kedon Slovis, a guy that started his career there at USC. JT Daniels goes down, tears his knee against Fresno State, and they're wondering what's going to happen. They end up bringing in the guy who was coached by Kurt Warner in high school out of Arizona, and Kedon Slovis, that freshman year, really leads USC, kind of resurrects things, and kind of saves the season there for Clay Helton. The problem was he gets into the bowl game, gets hit by A.J. Epinesa, arm, and I don't think he was really ever the same. This is a guy struggles with some accuracy problems, not the most mobile within the pocket. I think he got snake bit, really held on to the football a lot longer than he should have, and ultimately lost that starting spot. And he transfers to Pitt. And when he transfers to Pittsburgh, you're expecting to see a big year teaming with Jordan Addison, and ultimately that doesn't come to fruition either because Jordan Addison transfers to where else but USC. And so with Kedon Slovis, I think BYU is probably the right offense for him. Pitt, only 58.4% completion percentage, struggled with a lot of interceptions in his career with 33, 24 there for the Trojans, and then 9 this past season at Pitt. But the concussions, that's the other big concern that you have there. So Kedon Slovis, I think this is an opportunity to kind of resurrect that career. But man, he just has a lot of red flags all around him for the next level. So that's going to be the big question mark there. They've got a lot of youth there at the skill positions. Gunnar Romney's not going to be there anymore. They need to have some guys that'll be able to step up and catch the football. Cody Epps, Keanu Hill, Chase Roberts, they're all back, but they're all sophomores and juniors. In the running game, though, you get Aiden Robbins, this big 6'3", 230-pound running back out of UNLV. He's a guy that, if you listen to my podcast last year at all, I talked about him quite a bit because he was that physical presence there for the Runnin' Rebels. Got to see him play early on in the season. Transferred in from Louisville and went over 1,000 yards for the Rebs. 23 receptions as well, had 9 touchdowns, played in 11 games. Got a little bit of the injury bug, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Same goes for Isaac Rex. This is a guy that's battled some injuries in his time as well. 6'6", 255, the junior. Hasn't really lived up to really that, when he burst onto the scene as a freshman. I think everybody remembers that. As a freshman, redshirt freshman, over 400 yards and 12 touchdowns. Everyone talking about this is going to be the breakout star at tight end. Didn't really live up to that bill in 2021. This last year, another 320 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think Kedon Slovis, that's going to be a security blanket for him. And then that offensive line. No Blake Freeland. He's moved on to the league. And then the Barrington brothers, they've both taken off to Baylor. We'll be talking about them here in a moment. But Kingsley Suamataia, 6'6", 315. This is the guy that's finally going to get his shot at left tackle now that Blake Freeland is going. He played right tackle. This is a guy that over 300 pass block attempts and shut everybody down. No sacks or anything like that given up. And what's interesting is Bruce Feldman noted in the Freaks list that offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick was saying that Kingsley is actually the most athletic and violent offensive lineman he's ever coached, and he's coached Garrett Bowles and Blake Freeland. Blake Freeland, if you forgot about it, this is a guy that ran a 4.98 40 and jumped 37 inches at the combine. I mean, those were both combine records, as Bruce Feldman, the 37-inch vertical leap was a combine record that Bruce Feldman points out here. Suamataia is a lot bigger than Freeland, and is just dynamic as an athlete. The sports scientists there at BYU is saying that he's faster than some of the linebackers. A freak in the weight room. It's crazy looking at this. Ran 21.5 miles per hour as a 318-pound freshman. I mean, that's just staggering. So when you look at this, when you talk about the tackle group, you have Olu Fashanu, you have Joe Alt, and you have J.C. Latham. Who's going to be the fourth tackle? If it's not Kingsley Suamataia, I don't know who it is. The rest of the group is going to be an interesting mix. Connor Pay is only a junior at the center spot, but he's a returning starter from a season ago. And then they get Paul Mila, who transfers in. I want to say he transferred in from Utah, so they get another veteran presence there up front. 6'2", 300 pounds, the right guard. I think he could make some noise as a potential draftable prospect. A little undersized, so you really want to see some of that physicality with which he plays. Defensively, this is a team that they've got some holes and that they need to fill, but they've got the pass rusher Tyler Batty, 6'5", 273. He's only a junior, but a big year getting after the quarterback. We could potentially be talking about him as a guy that could be deciding that he wants to come out and enter the draft. A guy that I think can put some pressure there. He just needs to show the consistency. That's really the biggest thing that we're kind of waiting for with him. So that's going to be interesting to kind of see that dynamic, how it plays out. Caden Hawes, also a junior, the nose tackle, 6'2", 305. I think he comes back. I think really Batty's probably going to come back for another year as well. They do have Max Tooley, 6'2", 215 pounds, undersized linebacker, but a guy that flies around and makes plays. He struggled with some injuries, couldn't always stay on the field, but I think Ben Bywater is the guy to really watch out for. He's 6'3", 235 pounds, 98 tackles, had 3 interceptions. He's a guy that I think can be a playmaker for them. Keep an eye out there. I forgot about the right tackle. I got to back up for a second. Caleb Etienne, a transfer from Oklahoma State. He's 6'8", 325. He has a chance if this team can really get going, especially with that running game, to make some noise towards the back end of day number 3. They get a transfer from Utah State, AJ Vongpachong, 6'2", 230 pounds, veteran presence there as well. Not really considering him for the draft at this point, but a guy that is going to give a good veteran presence. The safeties, I think, are also going to be veterans for this group. I think it's kind of led by Micah Harper, the sophomore, and then Malik Moore at 6'1", 195 pounds, a senior, a guy that I'm expecting to kind of help lead that group on the back end of the defense. I think that's where they're going to struggle, is really in that secondary more than anything else. The cornerbacks are really going to have to step up. I think Tyler Batty's going to need some help getting after the quarterback. And then, if the linebackers can stay healthy, that'll be the real strength of that defense. But BYU, the fun is going to be up front, watching Kingsley Suamataia, watching Aiden Robinson, and really, can they keep Keaton Slovis healthy? If they can he return to some of what we saw when he was there at USC? That's really when he was at his best. Yes, there were a lot of mistakes, a lot of interceptions, but I think that was also a product of the system. I don't think he was a Graham Harrell quarterback. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do there under the guidance of Aaron Roderick. Next on the list, I guess, has to be Baylor, right? Dave Aranda's group. Look, Aranda really started hot with this program. Now he's 20-16 in 3 years. I think the league's really kind of caught up to things, figured out his defense a little bit, and it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, you're looking at Blake Shapen there at the quarterback position, the junior. They get Sawyer Robertson, a transfer from Mississippi State as well. And really the quarterback play hasn't been the best for the Baylor Bears, and so that's really where I think you're going to have to see some improvement. Shapen had 10 interceptions a season ago. They're going to have to get some help there. At the receiver spot, I think you look at Monterey Baldwin and Hal Presley. They're both juniors. We're going to see them come back for another season. But those are guys that I think we're expecting. Also, Josh Cameron, we can't forget about him. Ketron Jackson is a transfer from Arkansas, so he provides some depth, but a lot of young wide receivers Richard Reese, the running back, only a sophomore, 5'9", 175. He's the top returning running back, 972 yards and 14 touchdowns a season ago as a freshman. Dominic Richardson transfers in from Oklahoma State. He'll be a guy that I think will kind of be able to spell Reese a little bit. I think ultimately he's a guy that is going to be pushing to try to make a name for himself as a priority free agent. On the offensive line, only one returning starter from a season ago, and that's Gavin Byers, a left guard. But the guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing play is Clark Barrington, the senior, 6'6", 305, the transfer from BYU. I think he can be physical at the point of attack. A guy that has some talent to play, all over the line. I think he's a guy that, for me, is going to be a early day 3 pick in the draft. He's going to be playing with his brother, Campbell Barrington. Really want to see what he can do there at that left tackle position. Defensively, TJ Franklin, your defensive end, 6'5", 285 pounds, big physical dude. Gabe Hall on the opposite side at 6'6", and 296 pounds, 4.5 sacks a season ago. He's a guy that, he can play end, he can play tackle. I think some versatility to his game. He'll be a guy that I think we'll be talking about come draft time. I really do. I think he's a guy that can be a stud. TJ Franklin has the size. I just want to see him put everything together and be the guy for them. Matt Jones. This is a guy that kind of filled in at the linebacker spot. I want to say it was when Terrell Bernard went down to injury, and he really hasn't looked back. He's 6'3", 224 pounds, 65 tackles a season ago. Battled some injuries, but he's back. He'll be a guy to keep an eye out for sure. Mike Smith, the transfer from Liberty. This is a guy, he's athletic. He's 6'1", 225, a senior. Was one of the playmakers there for the Flames. So I think he's a guy that also has a chance. Jones Smith, again, late day 3, priority free agent. Garmin Randolph, he's 6'7", 247. I mean, just the size, the sheer size is what's intriguing. And I think that's what's going to keep the eyes on him. But can he play consistently? That's really the big question mark. 4.5 sacks a season ago. He's a guy that I really am looking forward to seeing. See if he can elevate his game. In the secondary, only one returning starter, and that's Devin Lemire. Only a sophomore. I think you got Bryson Jackson, converted linebacker, who's going to be playing that star position now. He's going to be somebody, he's 6'2", 204. He'll be someone to watch out for. He's switching positions. He's a 7th-year senior, though, so obviously you've got some medical concerns there. Ultimately, I look at Baylor, and I think there's going to be a big question mark with them. I think the front 7 is going to be solid. Really, it's the front 6 because they run a 3-3-5, but I think that'll be probably the strength of their team. And, I think Richard Reese will have another big year for them, only a sophomore, so we can't really talk about him for the draft. I think Baylor is going to struggle this year. I think they'll struggle to win 6 games. I don't see enough playmakers. But look, Dave Aranda with his defense, I think that's something that we'll have to continue to see kind of play out. Oklahoma State. Let's talk about the Cowboys, shall we? The quarterback spot, Spencer Sanders, kind of an up and down year a season ago. He decides he's going to transfer to Ole Miss. It sounds like he's going to hold the clipboard for Jackson Dart. I thought that was an interesting and kind of a strange transfer. Alan Bowman steps in, a guy that's he's played at a lot of different schools, Texas Tech, Michigan, battled some injuries. A guy that I think this is kind of his last shot, his last hurrah. 6'4", 209, good size. I think the returner that they get at the receiver spot to really keep an eye out for is Brendan Presley, 5'8", 175. Can be a weapon on the outside, but he's really a guy that's going to be a threat in the slot. 67 catches, 813 yards, 1,203 all-purpose yards as well. Very sudden guy. He's a day 3 candidate. They also bring in Dejon Stribling from Washington State, Arlen Bruce IV from Iowa. That'll also give them some depth at the receiver spot, both juniors. But I think there are two guys that you need to keep an eye out for. And then the same thing with the cowboy back, or your fullback, whichever you want to call it, tight end, if you will. Braden Cassidy, 6'2", 241. Not a guy that we'll be considering for the draft, but a guy that I think could play a big role there for that passing attack. When you look at things in the running game, obviously with Dominic Richardson leaving, Ollie Gordon, Jaden Nixon are going to be the guys that are going to have to get things going. They're a couple of underclassmen, not draft eligible. So you're seeing a theme here. A lot of guys that are younger, up front offensively. Preston Wilson, the right guard, Jake Springfield, the right tackle, are the two seniors that I'll be watching and studying a little bit. But I think that it'll be a stretch right now to consider them for the draft. I think really the talent is going to be on the defensive side of the football. You look at Collin Oliver, 6'2", 235 pounds, 5 sacks a season ago. But this is a guy that I think everybody is waiting to see if he can return to form from that standout freshman season in 2021, where he had 15.5 tackles for loss and 10.5 sacks, really kind of in a reserve role. He's going to be counted upon to have a huge year, and I'm worried. I'm waiting to see it. And 16.5 sacks, 23 tackles for loss over the last 2 seasons sounds great. When the majority of that production was really happening as a freshman, you want to see what this guy can do. So that's going to be a huge question mark. They get a couple of guys from Tulsa that are going to be intriguing. Anthony Goodlow is a defensive end, 6'5", 256 pounds, has 12 sacks in his career. Can he put consistent pressure, take some of that pressure off of Collin Oliver? And then you have Justin Wright. Justin Wright is a guy that I don't think is the best athlete by any means. 6'2", 234 pounds, but this is a guy, 254 tackles, 27.5 for loss, 7.5 sacks, had 101 tackles a season ago for the Golden Hurricane. 4 interceptions in his career. He just has a nose for a football. He's instinctive, but I think the lack of athleticism is really going to be his downfall when we were talking about the next level. I'm looking forward to seeing what Xavier Benson can do, obviously with their leading tackler from a season ago, Mason Cobb, leaving for the Trojans. Xavier Benson's going to be a guy that they're going to be relying upon. 76 tackles a season ago. I want to see him elevate his game. He's going to be a senior, so I really think if he wants to get himself drafted, 6 foot 215, he's undersized already. He's going to have to fly around and make a lot of plays. I think really the stud on the back end of their defense is going to be Kendall Daniels. 6'4", 213, the safety. He's only a sophomore, but I think he's going to be the dude that everyone's going to be talking about there on the back end of that Oklahoma State defense. I look at Oklahoma State. I think there are a lot of question marks, a lot of holes. What are we really going to see out of them? What's their identity going to be? I think there's some potential on the defensive side of the football. There are just so many question marks and so many holes that it's kind of hard to really get excited about Oklahoma State at this point. Which kind of leads me to Cincinnati. And Cincinnati's another team that, can we really get excited for the Bearcats right now? That's a huge question mark. Scott Satterfield taking over for Luke Fickell, who moved on to Wisconsin, right? So you look at the offense, they're returning one starter, and that's the center, Gavin Gerhardt. Emory Jones takes over at the quarterback spot with Ben Bryant transferring out. And with Emory Jones, he's playing for his third team as well. Played at Florida and Arizona State, 6'2", 211. A guy that, last year in his first year at Arizona State, played in 8 games, 62% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns before interceptions. Needs to cut down on the mistakes. Did have 758 yards in his last year there at Florida in 2021. Really struggled to really do a whole lot there at Arizona State. I thought that was not – he was not a good fit there for the Sun Devils. He's kind of a dual threat type of quarterback. Not really sure what you're going to see there. Corey Kiner is going to be their leading running back. Only a junior. Question marks there. They get D. Wiggins, senior from from Louisville, Donovan Ollie from Washington State, both seniors, both 6'3" receivers. But there's nothing that really gets me excited with this group. That's the biggest thing that I think, and my biggest takeaway is I just don't know what we're going to see. They're losing a lot of guys, and the guys that could have been back have transferred out on offense. So I'm really curious to see what the dynamic is going to look like. I just don't know. I think they're going to be putting the defense on the field a lot, and there's a lot to like on defense. That's really what's a shame. And when you look at that defense, I mean, I guess it's a good thing that we'll get to see a lot of this defense. The Godfather, Dontay Corleone, the nose tackle, 6'1", 323 pounds. And look, we have to go back to Bruce Feldman's freak list. Bruce Feldman notes that he's got a size 18 shoe, size 11 hand. Freaking absolutely ridiculous. This is a dude who is going to be a run stuffer extraordinaire. 44 tackles, 5.5 for loss, 3 sacks, a couple of fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles. Bench presses 485, squats 605, deadlifts 700. Seriously, 18 miles per hour, the GPS. Very athletic. So that's going to be one of the focal points. And if you've got one, why not have 2 there at the defensive tackle spot that we're going to be talking about? And that's going to be Juwan Briggs. He's actually a defensive end. 6'1", 305 himself. 60 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. And, look, Bruce Feldman notes he's already got his bachelor's degree from Virginia in physics and music focus. Dude plays about 7-8 different instruments, which is insane. Squats 700 pounds in high school. Deadlifts 655 pounds, 31 reps in the bench press at 225, 18.6 miles per hour. So this is one of the better duos up front. I think Malik Vann, we're expecting to see him step up, 6'4", 268. Corleone and Briggs, though, these are 2 guys. I think Corleone, because of the run stuffing ability, we could be talking about, in the middle of day 2. I think Briggs is one of those sneaky guys that we're going to see, emerge early day 3. I think Daniel Greziak, coming over from Utah State, is a guy that knows how to get after the quarterback. 8.5 sacks, 13 tackles for loss a season ago. So they've got some pass rush ability there as well. I think you also have to get excited about Deshaun Pace, the star back. A guy that's played linebacker, moving back to kind of a safety type role, 6'2", 210 pounds. He's a guy for me that flies around and makes plays. I think the versatility is something that you're really looking forward to. He played that linebacker role, and you just didn't see enough out of Deshaun Pace. You wanted to see him return to that 2021 form, and I think that's really where he was at his best. You allow him to just move freely. 95 tackles. 9.5 going for loss, 4 interceptions. He's a playmaker, and he'll be a guy that I think is going to be a key piece on the back end of that defense for sure. The safety Barryn Sorrell, 5'10", 192 pounds, only a junior. He'll be a guy to watch out for, but very young in the secondary, so that's a big question mark there. I really think the front and Deshaun Pace, that's going to be what's going to be fun to watch with Cincinnati on the defensive side of the football. Offensively, there's just going to be so many question marks. I really don't know where to turn, where to look, what the strength is really going to be of that team. It's just going to be a huge toss-up, a huge gamble, and I think you're going to see a big step back in year 1 under Scott Satterfield. I think he's really got his work cut out for him, but more power to him. We'll see exactly what that looks like come week 1. UCF, the UCF look, season ago 9-5, 6-2 in the American Conference. They bring in a quarterback who started a season ago in John Rice Plumlee, and look, this is a guy. He's athletic. Over 2,500 yards through the air, 14 touchdowns, but 8 interceptions. Definitely needs to cut down on the mistakes. 6 foot, 200 pounds, not the biggest guy by any means. The running back, R.J. Harvey, wasn't even the top running back. It was, Plumlee was the guy. 862 yards and 11 touchdowns. Plumlee, because of his athleticism, is intriguing more so as an athlete. You think of Taysom Hill, could John Rice Plumlee fit a role like that? I think when you look at the receivers, Javon Baker, Kobe Hudson, both 6'1"-ish, 200 pounds. Both of those guys, I think, have talent. With a big year with Plumlee, there's a chance that we could be talking about them, probably mid to late day 3, potentially also as undrafted free agents, priority free agents. But I think there's a chance there. And then when you look at the offensive line, look at that left tackle. Look at Tylan Grable. Big and physical. He's 6'7", 290 pounds. He's intriguing. Same with Lokahid Paule, 6'4", 305. Now, Paule, 2-year starter versus Grable, who was a transfer from Jacksonville State. Started 14 games, though. I think those are the 2 guys up front that I'll be evaluating potentially for the next level. Then you look at the defense. Defense has a lot of guys up front that you can get excited about. Josh Seliscar, 6'4", 265. Good length. A guy that I think just needs to be more consistent getting after the quarterback. He and his brother, were staples there on that defensive side. Wearing number 88, he's kind of hard to miss. 20.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. Just want to see him elevate his game. I think he's got he's a good athlete, but really want to see him be a lot more consistent. I think the guy for me up front is going to be Ricky Barber, 6'3", 290. He started his career at Western Kentucky. Played the last 2 years there at UCF, and this is a guy. Look, he has the potential to make plays behind the line of scrimmage and really in getting after the quarterback. 21.5 tackles for loss, 11 sacks in his career. When you look at it, 49 tackles this past season. Very active from that defensive tackle position. And then Tremont Morris Brash, he's 6'2", 245. A guy that I think, when I look at Ricky Barber, I think of Kobe Turner. And I think Ricky Barber could potentially see that rise up draft boards that we saw with Kobe Turner. With Tremont Morris Brash, though, I think he's more of a day 3 guy and a guy that is likely going to be an outside linebacker, just a little undersized to play with his hand in the dirt. But 13 tackles for loss, 6 sacks a season ago. And then Jason Johnson, really the one linebacker of note on the roster. But look, he's 6'4", 224 pounds. 126 tackles a season ago. He's going to fly around and make plays. And then when you get to that secondary, DeCorian Patterson, that's the name to look out for. 6 foot, 193 pounds. DeCorian Patterson is a guy that I think could end up being a top-tier corner. Really, people forgot about him because he was playing at Middle Tennessee State. But 7 interceptions a season ago to lead FBS. 12 pass breakups as well. 29 total pass breakups in his career. Also has 10.5 tackles for loss under his belt. Had 65 tackles this past season. He's a guy that isn't afraid to stick his nose into the mix, but he's a playmaker. He's an absolute playmaker. He's a guy on the outside. When he transferred in, obviously now we're going to get to see him in Power 5 conference play. And what can he do against, the likes of Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel and company. I'm really looking forward to seeing some big things from DeCorian Patterson. Honestly, of the 4 newcomers to the Big 12, I think the team that's going to make the most noise, just looking at the roster now, is UCF. I think the Golden Knights are well positioned to have a solid year. I think they've got some talent both on the offensive and defensive side of the football. And, I think their game is going to play well in the Big 12, and there are some teams with a ton of question marks. So if John Rice Plumlee can have a big year, then I think UCF will be in that talk as kind of that second tier of teams in the Big 12, which will take us to Houston. I think the final of the group, and honestly, Houston's actually better off than Cincinnati. Dana Holgorsen returning to the Big 12, if you will. 8-5 a season ago. Obviously, you lose Clayton Tune, you lose Tank Dell, one of the most prolific duos in school history for sure. You bring in Donovan Smith, the junior from Texas Tech, and that's going to be a big question mark is can he play consistent football? Can he stay healthy? He's kind of that dual threat guy there at that quarterback spot, but he's a big dude. He's 6'5", 241. I think he could potentially be poised for a big year running this offense for Dana Holgorsen. But the question is going to be who's going to be his receiver. They've got a lot of sophomores there at the receiver group. Samuel Brown, Matthew Golden, Joseph Manjack. Who's going to step up and be that guy? But the guy I'm really looking forward to watching play is Patrick Paul, the 6'7", 316-pounder. He's a junior, and a guy that, look, he's allowed 4 sacks in just under 1,100 pass blocking snaps. He's physical at the point of attack. His brother Chris Paul, from Tulsa, obviously a guy that went in the draft. But you look at Patrick Paul, I think he moves well. I think the lateral quickness is there, but the power in his hands. He's very physical at the point of attack. He's a guy that I think you can get excited about. Defensively, David Ogwebu transfers in from OU. He's a guy that when he's playing that inside linebacker position, he made some plays there at OU. He's 6'4", 248 pounds, 109 tackles this last season, 7.5 going for loss, 2 sacks. The question is really going to be, where are they going to be playing him? Is he going to be a linebacker? It sounds like he's probably going to be more pass rush oriented. We just haven't seen much of that from him. So I'll be curious to see, moving from that linebacker spot to kind of an edge rush position, what are we going to see from him? We could end up seeing a big year out of him. It's a big question mark right now. Not really sure what you're going to get. This is a defense that really struggled in 2020, with 112th in points per game allowed, and that's 32.2. I think the defensive front is going to be a strength. Chidozie Nwankwo is a junior, the nose guard. 5'11", 295, undersized guy, but a guy that knows how to plug up the middle. Nelson Caesar will be a nice pass rusher, 6'3", 250, also a junior. And then I think probably the most intriguing of the holdovers maybe is Ikea Strong. He's 6'5", 265, tremendous length. It's just a matter of, can he put everything together? That's, I think, going to be the big question mark right now. Very inexperienced in linebacker and really in the secondary as well. The only returning starter is Jalen Emery, the 5'9", 175-pound sophomore nickel. So they've got a lot of holes that they're going to have to fill and really kind of figure some things out. They've got some transfers that came in. Brian George from Texas A&M, Isaiah Hamilton from Texas Southern. Those are going to be guys that are going to be stepping up. Antonio Brooks had a really nice spring, the 5'11", 200-pound safety. But I don't see much in terms of guys that I'd be interested in for the draft. I think really David Ogwebu is the one that's interesting and intriguing for me. Strong and Caesar are 2 guys and that we could be talking about next year potentially if they have a big year. Houston, the excitement's really going to be on the offensive side. What can Donovan Smith do? What can Patrick Paul at that left tackle position? But with all the question marks there on both sides of the football, I think Houston is going to struggle early and often. Iowa State, this is a team, I think, the fall from grace with Hunter Deckers and the gambling scandal, who's going to ultimately play quarterback if it's not going to be him. You have Jarrell Brock, the 6', 220-pound senior running back. He's back. Just 445 yards and 3 touchdowns a season ago. It looks like they've got a trio of backs that'll be sharing some time there. Then you look at the receiving group. Obviously, you've got to replace Xavier Hutchinson. This guy had a school record 107 catches a season ago. How do you replace that? That's going to be a huge question mark. You've got Jalen Knoll. You got Dimitri Stanley. Not really sure what you got there. But then you have Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 215 pounds. He's the guy that, you're wondering, is he going to be the next Xavier Hutchinson? Eastern Kentucky transfer. I think he's the guy that's going to make some noise there in that passing attack. It's just going to be, who's going to get him the football. That's going to be a huge question mark. The tight end, Deshaun Hanukkah. Obviously, gone are the days of Charlie Kolar and Chase Allen and all the guys there lining up at tight end. But, Deshaun Hanukkah, he's 6'6", 238 pounds, 240 pounds. But this is a guy, 244 catches, 4 touchdowns a season ago. He's a guy that, hopefully he'll be able to kind of help, both as a pass protector and as a run blocker. I think Daryl Simmons and Jake Remsburg on the right side of the line, that's really going to be your strength. They're both seniors. I'll be evaluating them to see what they can do, in terms of moving on to the next level. Obviously, when you lose a guy like Will McDonald IV, the guy that he was one of the best pure pass rushers, and the athleticism is off the charts. That's why the Jets drafted him in round number 1. I look at the defense, and the one guy that I kind of gravitate towards is TJ Tampa. That's really the big guy that I get excited about. He's big at that quarterback position, 6'2", 185 pounds, and he's very physical. He's a guy that isn't afraid to come up and hit you in the mouth, both in the running game and just with guys coming over the middle. 5 tackles for loss, 9 pass breakups, had an interception. He's really going to be the focal point of that passing attack. But yeah, there are just so many question marks with this group, especially at that quarterback position. If Iowa State doesn't have somebody that can really throw the football, I think Matt Campbell could be in for a long year. But he's a guy that I think had a lot of momentum, especially with Brock Purdy when he was there. I think he's really struggling to kind of get that back, capture lightning in the bottle again. But I think he's in a much better position than Neil Brown at West Virginia. I think Neil Brown's probably on his way out. He was the hot young coach coming out of Troy, and 5-7 this past season. And I don't know how many wins we're going to see this year out of this group. To be perfectly honest with you, I think the big exciting thing is going to be C.J. Donaldson, their sophomore running back, 6'2", 239. This guy is powerful. He's a guy that's going to run you over. He's going to be fun to watch. But Garrett Green, inexperienced there at that quarterback spot. He was a guy that was sharing some time with JT Daniels, who's moved on to Rice. I think their strength, though, is going to be on the offensive line. You've got Zach Frazier, 6'3", 310, the junior, a guy that I think with a big year could decide to come out and enter the draft. I think he'll be the top 2 or 3 centers in the country. I really do. I think Cedric Van Pran, Frazier, and probably Bryce Foster of Texas A&M are probably your top 3 right now, with Matthew Lee of Miami also in that mix as well. But the right tackle, Doug Nestor, 6'7", 318, good size. Expecting to see him have a big year, especially he transferred from Virginia Tech, and now he's in this group. Interesting to see what he can do. And then a tight end that's going to be interesting is Cole Taylor, transfer from LSU. I think in this offense it'll be interesting to see what he can do there. You also get NC State transfer Devin Carter. I think with West Virginia, they've had some receivers come in and out of that group. But when I look at Devin Carter, he's a guy that has that size at 6'3", 215 pounds, a veteran presence. He's coming over from the ACC. I'm at least intrigued. I want to see what's going to happen there. Obviously, his quarterback, Devin Leary, took off for Kentucky, so he's transferring here to West Virginia, and only played in 9 games a season ago. He's averaged right around 500 yards receiving. I think he could be the focal point. I think that's really what he's looking for, is to be the guy, if you will, for the Mountaineers. When you look at Sean Martin, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks a season ago, junior defensive end, 6'5", 293, excellent size. He's a guy that I think has next level potential, as does Jared Bartlett, their linebacker, 6'2", 236 pounds. Bartlett's another guy that flies around, makes plays, looks to hit you in the mouth quite a bit. And then Lee Pogba. He's 6'1", 231. He was a leading tackler from a season ago. He's going to man the middle of the defense. So he's another intriguing prospect. And then they get Montre Miller, a transfer from Kent State. And look, the Golden Flashes, when you lose a head coach like Sean Lewis, you're going to see a mass exodus. And West Virginia really gets a guy that can be that star corner for them. 18 pass breakups in his career, go along with 6 interceptions, including 4 in 2021. A 6th-year senior. He's really going to be the guy that needs to step up and have a big year on the back end of that defense. But again, I think Neil Brown has his work cut out for him, and he's really going to be struggling to keep his job there at West Virginia. It's going to be a struggle, and I'll be curious to see really how that all plays out. So Big 12, like I said, Texas, it's probably their conference to lose, but OU, I think, is gaining ground. And if they can get some consistent quarterback play from Dillon Gabriel, they could be right there in the mix and potentially supplant Texas as the team to beat. I think when you look at the teams that are coming in, you've got BYU and you've got UCF on one end, and then you've got Houston and Cincinnati on the other towards the bottom of this group. And then K-State, TCU, Texas Tech, and Kansas are probably the group of teams that are probably a step right below UT and OU. So the games to watch, obviously on the second, Colorado against TCU. Man, you got Coach Prime going up against the team that made it all the way to the national championship. Really looking forward to seeing that matchup. Chandler Morris getting a back under center. That'll be a fun, intriguing matchup. Then you got Texas traveling to Tuscaloosa on September 9th. Steve Sarkisian making his return to Bryant-Denny Stadium. And look, what can Quinn Ewers do as kind of an encore performance? Can he stay healthy? I think Texas has a shot against Alabama. As you continue to go, obviously you've got the backyard brawl, Pittsburgh against West Virginia on September 16th. Probably not the most exciting game that we're going to see, that's for sure. Obviously, OU Texas, the Red River rivalry, October 7th, Dallas, Texas. Keep an eye out for that game. Obviously, last year, the 49-0 blowout. Obviously, they wound up having to have Braden Willis kind of as a wildcat quarterback there. This year, if anything happens to Dillon Gabriel, you've got Jackson Arnold. And that's going to be one of the games of the year. I think that's really going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be a lot closer than we've seen this rivalry in quite some time. It's going to be an exciting game. TCU and K-State, October 21st, rematch of the Big 12 championship. Will Howard, I think this is a chance for him to kind of start making a name for himself and put himself into that conversation kind of as a late day 3 guy, but I think a guy that could definitely get himself drafted. And I think this could be K-State's ability to really set the stage to be that number 3 team in the Big 12. Bedlam could be the last Bedlam for a while. November 4th, that'll be in Stillwater. OU taking on Oklahoma State. Look, they throw the records out in this game. A lot of games are played much closer, but I think OU, it should be a dominant game for them. K-State taking on Texas on November 4th. I think this is going to be an intriguing matchup as well. Can K-State, they play a physical brand of football. Can they push Texas around, or can Texas really showcase the ability to fly around and make plays both on offense and defense? Texas follows that up a week later, going to Fort Worth, Amon G. Carter Stadium. That'll be a fun game on November 11th. OU taking on BYU. What's interesting is Athlon Sports has noted that this is their first ever trip to Provo for OU. And so that's really an interesting matchup. I think OU wins this game handedly, but I'm really curious to see what Bothroyd, Grimes, and Downs can do against Kingsley Suamataia. I think just any of the matchups this year, I want to see what Suamataia can do. Is there anybody that can get by this guy? That's going to be really a fun matchup. And then I think to close things out on November 18th, obviously you've got I guess it's called the Sunflower Showdown rivalry. That's K-State and Kansas. And really, where's Jaden Daniels at in his development? I think he's a quarterback we'll be talking about for next year's draft. But can he continue his development as a passer? That's really the big thing. We already know he's a tremendous athlete, but can he really turn the corner as a passer this year? That can really help him set the stage for next season. So we've put the Big 12 to bed. Like I said, Texas, Oklahoma, those will be the 2 teams to keep an eye out for in their final year in the Big 12. We're going to then move on to the ACC. And obviously, when you're looking at a conference that has the likes of Drake May, Jared Verse, Jordan Travis, Will Shipley, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Barrett Carter, there are other names that you also have to make sure to be talking about, and we're going to make sure that we touch on Riley Leonard and Graham Barton of Duke. Obviously, the guys on the interior there for Clemson, and Duke Arohoro and Tyler Davis. How about Leonard Taylor and Akeem Mesidor up front for the Hurricanes, and then Cam Kinchens and James Williams on the back end of that defense? There are a lot of guys to get excited about in this conference, a lot of guys that I think we'll be talking about on all 3 days of the draft. So we'll be covering that here in the next day or so. So stick around. We'll cover the ACC. We'll talk about the Pac-12. We'll get into Group of 5, and then we'll also talk about week 0 of the college football season that's coming up on the 26th. Got a lot to cram into these next few days, so that's why we'll be bringing podcasts to you